Hello and welcome to this episode of Freedom Families. Today I'm super excited to introduce you to our guest, Sam Sorbo, who is a wife, a mom, a writer, an actress, and the host of the Sam Sorbo Show. Today we are going to be talking about homeschooling. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks so much.
Did you go to a public school growing up? Were you homeschooled? What was your education like?
So both my husband and I went to public school all the way through.
Did you know homeschool families growing
No.
up, or what was your first exposure to homeschooling?
So my first exposure, I met some people who homeschooled, kind of hippie granola type people, anti-establishment type people, and I'm very sort of easygoing, so I enjoyed all kinds of people. So I hung out with them for a little bit and watched what they did, um, and thought, okay, so homeschooling is really not my bag. That's just not what, it's not going to do
Mhm.
it for me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then we moved to a place that had better schools. We moved for the schools. And 2 years in, I realized the school was not getting the job done.
How did you realize that?
So there were a couple of different episodes because it's not ever just one thing where you go, well, I suppose maybe for some people it is, but for me it was a series of events that happened in the school that I wrote about in my homeschooling book, which is called They're Your Kids.
Mm.
And one of the things was, for instance, we traveled, and so we had to go away for 3 weeks. And the deal is that if you're traveling and you tell the school and you give them time to prepare, they will give you work to do with your child. Your child will do the work. You turn the work in. Then the school can say, he was still in school, so we can collect the money for him. And that's sort of the deal that you make with the school, right? Because your child going to school is money to them. And a lot of our system is based on the exchange of money rather than what's best for the kids. So I brought the work with me. And the first day we sat down to do the work, my son said, "Oh, mommy, mommy said, teacher says I don't have to do this, mommy. We don't do this in class. We don't have to do this." And I thought that's kind of odd. So she gave me work that she would not require in the classroom, but she's requiring me to make him do it. So now I'm somehow the bad guy. And then I looked at the work and I didn't like it. It was busy work. It was no wonder she didn't have them do it in the classroom. And I thought, really, what's this about then? But I'm required to bring it in so that I don't get written up, so the school can say, no, he's not absent. He's here, he's here in spirit, basically. There were a couple of other things like that, so that by the end of the school year, I just was like itching to not go back there. And so I looked at private schools and they were very expensive. And I thought I could do that, or I could try homeschooling because, those homeschoolers, they weren't that bad. They just, maybe I didn't agree with them politically or whatever, but it was kind of interesting. And I said to my husband, I think I want to try homeschooling. And he said, why? And I said, because I think if I fail, it will still be better for our son. So that's how low the bar is set, in my view. It's a very low bar.
It sounded like when you got that packet of work to do, that it more so felt like checking off a box versus actually training our kids in how to learn and in certain areas and topics. Is that what you would say? Like checking off a box, like you did it, you're done, you're good, versus actually caring about what the kid is learning and how the kid is growing.
Well, I mean, that is you've summed up the nature of our school system.
Do you think that that would change? I know Corey DeAngelis talks about funding the kid versus funding the system. Do you think that that would help?
Yes, I do believe that funding the kid versus the system would help. I also see a little bit of a danger in that because that really is just wealth redistribution.
Mm.
So that's just fraught with other issues, which it's probably an improvement on. I think it absolutely would be an improvement on what we have right now. I don't know that it is the solution. I think it's a short-term fix for a very long-term problem.
When, let's say, I know a lot of our listeners will be in the same boat that I was in, where they don't personally know anyone who homeschools. And when they hear of homeschooling, let's say you even get them on board with that homeschooling is a good idea or something that can be largely beneficial for your children, which I think a lot of people are at least more open to the idea after this last year, right? When so many of us were forced to do some version of homeschooling, and you had many states' websites that crashed because parents started to see that what the public school system was able to offer in way of either really nothing at all, right? Or an online schooling, parents realized that it wasn't getting the job done. And we know now over a year into it that kids are losing months and months of learning. We've lost, I think the studies are saying 3 million kids that are off the grid per se, where they were in the school system, but since the schools shut down last spring, the schools have not heard from the families, and the children have not logged on, and have not been back. So let's say you have a parent on board, they're interested in homeschooling, and what they have envisioned in their mind is setting up a little classroom in their home, and from 7:30 in the morning until 3 p.m., they're trying to get their kid to focus. So, um, explain to us what maybe a homeschool day uh, looks like.
Oh, that is such a good question, and I can tell that you've seen some of my videos. So here's the deal, folks. The United States is 27th in the world. We don't have the, education thing all sussed out and the schools are perfect and they're getting the job done. They're not. They're not getting the job done. They're actually getting the wrong job done.
Mm,
They're limiting children's thoughts. They're really in the process of eliminating learning math, which is the language of logic, which is the language of thought. They don't teach writing anymore. They
mm,
don't teach history anymore. So the last thing you want to do is try to recreate school anywhere. Throw away what the schools are doing because they're so ineffective at engendering an education and engendering learning. Okay, um, you have to toss out that paradigm and basically invent one for yourself and for your child. And that doesn't mean you're reinventing the wheel per se. It just means that we have to we have to redefine the term education for ourselves. Back to the old definition. The old definition was the pursuit of truth, beauty, and goodness. So, teaching the discernment of truth, beauty, and goodness. The schools do the exact opposite. They teach that there is no truth, there is no such thing as beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. Anything can be beautiful. And there is no such thing like good is just, it depends on what day of the week it is and who's talking. Okay. I have my truth, you have your truth. I
mhm.
mean, all of this is nonsense. And so if you and it's so hard to do. Look, it's taken me over a decade to get here, okay? It's a very long journey away from the public school paradigm that I grew up in, okay? And I'm trying to shortcut it for people and I know this is like a really tough pill to swallow, but once you can step outside that paradigm and say, okay, that's not where I'm going. You know where you used to be? What do you do before you ask a question in school?
Raise your hand.
You have to ask permission to ask it. No, no, no. That's not learning. That's discouraging learning. You see what I'm saying? They flipped it on its head. They're doing everything the wrong way. So take whatever they do and do the opposite. I need you to interrupt me if you have a question. I want to know right away when you have a question. blurt it out,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that
Mhm.
will encourage curiosity. They do things that stifle curiosity, that dissuade from learning. So, when you're starting out, please don't do a lot of school. What kid wants to sit? Well, okay, there are some kids who do want to sit and draw and color and try to
Mhm.
write the alphabet.
Mhm.
When your child shows inclinations to draw and color, give them the alphabet. Absolutely, right? But if your child wants to get up and run around outside, that child needs to get up and run around outside. And so you impose a little bit of structure. Well, okay, kids do need structure, but you impose a little bit of an educational structure and a lot of exploration. And then you slowly hone that so that, yes, when they get into higher grades like third and fourth and fifth grade, you can impose some actual work. But the last thing you want to do is like beat them over the head with stuff, with learning, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
What you want to do is engender lifelong curiosity. And the point of education is to learn how to teach yourself. So you want your children to be, in a sense, self-taught. That's why when people say, "Oh, my hat's off to you, you homeschool." Oh, I go, "No, no, I'm sorry. No, no. I'm not the hero here." Because my job is easy compared to the job of a parent who sends their child into a system that is geared to indoctrinate their child away from them, such that anything that they say, if it conflicts, they lose. The school will win. Because when the parent turns the child over to the school, he's telling the child, the school has the authority and the school knows better than I do. And so anything that comes from the school, if it conflicts with what the parent says, the parent's gonna lose that, basically gonna lose that battle. That's why you have, people say, "Oh, teenagers, oh." No, no, no. I love my teens. They love me. We have a fantastic relationship.
Mhm.
There's none of this. Mom, there's none of that.
I can attest to the fact that that is it's expected. I think that we are so ingrained in, um, expecting our kids to disagree with us by the time they become even preteens now or possibly earlier. That's expected that parents kind of shrug it off and,
Yeah.
when they're talking to other parents, like, it's just what happens.
Right.
But then
And
I
but
know.
look at our entertainment. Look
Mhm.
at what they do on Disney Channel and ABC or whatever, and they dress the little preteens up in little halters and short shorts, and they talk back to their parents, and the dad's always the stupid one in the
Yeah.
sitcom, and I
Mhm.
mean they've really done a number to try to destroy American families, and it's time we stopped listening to them. It's time we fought back, and it's time we stopped exposing our children to that very dangerous ideology.
I agree, and on that point, what do you recommend for families who are thinking about? Because you're also, as a writer of different films and an actress, what type of boundaries do you draw around technology and the things that your kids watch or don't watch? Is it more of, having an open dialogue with them? It's a complicated issue where we think about the public schools giving the kids who go to their schools Chromebooks, right, with access to YouTube. And even if it's YouTube Kids, there are plenty of things on there that I would not want my kid exposed to. And if we think about Little Nas X, right, with the Satan shoes that came out last week, that was someone who, even in an NPR interview last fall, admitted that he is largely listened to by children and young adults. And just imagine, I know that a family I nannied for, they were singing his, I'm not sure what it's called, but it was like a cowboy type song. And they said they listened to it in gym class. So if they're listening to Little Nas X in Fayette at school, and then they go home and they put that on YouTube, and then down on the side, it recommends a different video. Right? It
Right.
only it only takes that. What do
Right.
you recommend for parents to have those healthy boundaries without completely shielding them from everything around them?
Well, okay, completely shield them. Well, it's sort of like, here's the thing. The argument is, well, they're going to get it eventually. Okay, then why not just pimp out your 5-year-old for sex? They're going to get it eventually. There should be boundaries and there should be restrictions, and you should have well delineated lines. Is it hard to do? Yes. Sometimes it's hard to parent. Parenting is difficult. It's challenging. You know the strongest word? No. So you say no to your children, and you don't broach, and I've done a series of videos on parenting because initially, during the COVID lockdowns, I got a lot of responses on my videos and stuff that are up on my website, samsorbo.com. And a lot of them were about behavior
Mm,
problems with their kids. And I started to identify, that's not a school issue. That's not an education issue. That's a parenting issue. Well, we sort of lost our ability to parent because while we sort of tossed out our children into for education, we just sort of farmed them out that way. We actually also farmed out a lot of the parenting a lot of the parenting responsibilities that we have. And so I've done videos on this as well. You have to say no. And and here's the thing, you don't owe your child, in a sense, you don't owe them anything. Like, mom, I want to watch the movie tonight. No.
mhm,
My kids, so all 3 kids took piano.
mm.
And I remember the day that the 2 younger ones sort of ganged up on me. They thought they could form a pact. They formed an alliance, and we were on our way into a building, and I still have the vision. The glass doors, automatic glass doors opened.
Uh-huh.
They walked through, and then they both turned to me and they said, "Mom, we've been thinking, we're kind of done with piano. And so we don't wanna take piano lessons anymore." And they were like, I don't know, 10 and 12 maybe? Something like that?
Mhm,
8 and 10 maybe?
mhm.
And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And I could see them like, "Hey, and I just said, "That's interesting. No." And their faces were like, "Wait, what?" It hadn't occurred to them that I might just say,
Mhm.
"No." And my oldest wanted to quit piano, and I said, "No." And he said, "No, no, you don't understand. I want to take guitar." And I said, "Awesome. Guitar is a great instrument to learn along with piano,
Mm, mhm.
and you're not going to quit piano. But that's great. I will find you guitar like, no, no, never mind." Same thing with Latin. So the parent has, I have a role to play, and
Mhm,
my role is to toe a line. And by the way, the kids are desperate to know the line. They are
mm,
desperate for the line. And when they win in getting you to move your line, it's not necessarily a win for them. Even though on the outside they're like, "Yes, I won. I never have to study stupid piano again." On the inside they know that either you're weak because you compromised your values, or I don't know, what's the other
you
thing
don't
that might have
care,
happened?
that you don't care.
That you had no values to begin with, and so
Yeah,
you're just fickle, and you decided to require piano, and then you decided not to?
mhm,
And how unsettling for a child.
mhm.
Children need authority. Frankly, we all need authority.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
so that's my advice there. I will say that homeschooling is, or what I like to call home education, is more rewarding than you've ever dreamed and much easier than you ever imagined.
On your show and in your videos, you are always very clear in not blaming the teachers, but more so the system. So I just thought I would give you a moment to, make that clear for our listeners.
No, that's true. I never blame the teachers. I think the teachers are doing, yeoman's work. They're trying to do the best they can, and 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 people say to me, I'm from Nebraska or I'm from Iowa or whatever, and my
Minnesota.
schools are really good. What's that?
Minnesota for me.
Well, Minnesota, your public schools in Minnesota are, you're struggling. But I'm talking about really rural. And of course, I don't know where in Minnesota you are, but in the more rural, I'm from a small town and our teachers are great and I know them all by name. Okay, you know them all by name, and that's great. However, I just add the caveat. And look, I don't have it in for teachers. I think I would love for good teachers to get out of a corrupted system and hang a shingle and educate people's children for them on a like a one room schoolhouse type setting.
Mhm.
But you're still sending, even if the school is the sweetest little school and everything, you're still sending your children into a corrupted system that's been overrun by Marxist philosophy. The books all have really bad stuff in them, including pornography.
Mhm.
And it's possible that your teachers are vigilant, and it's possible that they're not. So unless you know the teacher intimately and know that they study all the textbooks that they have in the classroom and they make sure that your children are protected, you're the best protection your children have. And by the way, that doesn't mean that homeschoolers have it all dialed in either. I mean, I've seen good examples and bad examples, and I've seen home educators who their kids get a hold of things on the internet or just at the library or whatever, because that's what kids do. That's their job. They're supposed to go out and explore and try to
Mhm.
find the worst possible stuff that they can find. But I think the job of the parent is to try to protect them for as long as you can, in a way that empowers them to take on the real world when they're ready to meet it.
The number one thing that I've heard, and I think you would agree with this, for those who are not familiar with homeschooling at all, is the fear that their kid is going to be weird or socially inept. And I know that you have some great input on that.
Yeah, you started with that. You said, I knew one kid and he was really weird or something like that. And it's true, because it used to be that our school system, we didn't realize that it was going downhill. We thought it was still doing a good job. Just look at the results from colleges today. Okay, so many kids are graduating from college with $230,000 in debt and
Mm.
not a job prospect to dream of. And how can they call that an education? So we didn't realize that the whole system was sort of collapsing in on itself at the time. And so we went through it and we said, well, that worked out great. But um, sorry, sorry, I completely got off track there.
Oh, the input that you like to share with potential homeschool parents where their fear lies in, well, they're not
Oh, the
saying.
fear of the weirdness, the weird
Yeah.
factor. Yes,
Mhm.
sorry, the weird factor. So decades ago, if you chose to homeschool, it was because your child was weird or because you were like really outside the norm.
Mhm.
Meaning you were like a religious zealot, or right. And that was pretty much the standard. There were very few sort of just normal, hey, I think I'm going to homeschool my kids. It was pretty much, my kid can't possibly survive in the school setting because he's going to be bullied to death, or he has been bullied and I need to pull him out, or he's too slow and I need to pull him out, or he's too bright and I need to pull him out. It's the weirdos. And that's why homeschoolers got this really bad rap, right? That they're either the weirdos or the super religious or something along those lines. That is no longer the case. And the fact is that if you're normal, your kids are going to be like you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or if they're not like you, they're just not going to be like you. Like then they're going to be weird if they go to school, or they're going to be weird if they stay home. It really doesn't matter. The great thing about home education is how well socialized the kids turn out to be, and that, of course, was the big argument that the uneducated people would have is, well, what about socialization? Because I want my kid to be socialized. And I always said to them, well, I thought we were talking about education. Now you're sort of changing the subject, but you want to talk about socialization? Okay. Home educated children are much better socialized than public school children. Why? Because you can't expect a sixth grader to learn manners from another sixth grader.
Mhm.
And yet, if you're home educated, chances are you are conversing and interacting with people of all ages. And so you learn how to behave. You learn what's expected and you learn how to behave. The other thing that happens is when your children, as a parent, when your children are with you all the time, you know that you're the educator, you know you have a job to do. And so when you're going into the store and your kid opens the door and walks right in and leaves you there, you call him back and you say, darling, this is how you open the door for somebody.
Yes.
And by the way, when little kids do that, you're empowering them. When you teach them how to do things properly, then they feel like, I know how to do something properly, and now I'm going to do it. So the first day, I remember the first time I taught my daughter how to um, properly engage somebody who they were just meeting, and so she met this woman, and the woman said, well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Octavia. How are you doing? And Octavia said, fine. Okay. And I said, Tavy, when somebody asks you how you're doing, typically you'll say, I'm fine, thank you. And how are you? Do it now.
Mhm.
Because that's how we teach them, right? We give them the words and then we have them say the words. You don't tell your child, go and apologize. You tell your child exactly the words that they need to say, at least the first few times,
Mhm.
so that they understand the metric, right? The paradigm. I'm sorry for X. I understand that it hurt you. I promise never to do it again. Will you forgive me? Okay. Four steps to an apology, right? Anyway, so she said it back, and the woman was like, oh, well, thank you for asking. Now, the woman knew that I was using her as a guinea pig. Did she mind? No, my
Mhm.
daughter's really cute.
Mm.
She's the one who engaged her to begin with. So, no, she was, enjoying that interaction. But the next time we met somebody, and she said, well, hello, Octavia. How are you? My daughter said, I'm fine. Thank you. How are you? And the woman said, oh, I'm fine. Thank you so much for asking. What a lovely little girl.
Mhm.
And then my daughter was all, oh,
Yes. Mhm.
I did it. I said, yay for me.
Mhm.
That's how we empower our children. And by the way, who's the hero in the story? Me. Because I win. Because not only do I have a polite, well behaved young girl, but she thinks that I'm amazing because I taught her that trick.
Right, and even if teachers want to do a really good job of those sorts of things, it's just not practical in a school day where you have one teacher per 25 or 30 students. And also, as you mentioned, I think your boys, you said, were in piano, correct? So
All three of them, yeah.
all 3,
Yeah.
just because you're
You want to know the end to that
Oh,
story?
sure.
So we recently moved and we finally got a piano, and now all three are sitting back down at the piano. But my one boy, my middle one, begged me for piano lessons a little while ago. He had been playing on a keyboard all during we took a break because we moved, so we took a break from piano lessons. My kids were all teenagers by then, and they're all proficient. So they got out of it what I wanted them to get out of it, right? They're proficient pianists. They can
Mhm.
play music and be successful there. But my one boy really sort of started dedicating himself. He really decided that he enjoyed challenging himself with more challenging pieces and really diving into it. And he was with some friends, and he heard a mom say that her daughter gave up piano. And he said to me, it made my heart sad.
I absolutely love the piano. I played it as well, and unfortunately, I was probably like the girl in the story. I quit after, I
Oh,
think, 7 years, and I now, a decade removed, wish that I had kept playing. But what I was going to say was, just because you're doing home education doesn't mean that you never leave your property, right? The kids go with you to
Well, that
all the places. They can be involved in sports. They can be involved in the local
oh, yeah,
school
and they
bands
were.
and other things. Hmm.
And they were. We would do weekly trips to the library with a great big bin that we would just pile books in, and
Hmm.
and their homeschool groups. I belong to a homeschool co-op. Basically, it's a co-op, and I highly recommend that for families to join co-ops and to find community. There are park days and there's social events, and my daughter went and did a protocol evening last night in a formal gown, and all of that. And I've got the photos to prove it. There's all of that. The what you have to understand is that the media is together with the education bureaucracy, the
Hmm.
public school bureaucracy. They are actively engaged in dissuading you from taking your children out of public school because public schools need the money. It's all about the money. And so they will tell you anything. And so when they talk about home education, you'll see you'll see a photo of mom bending over the kitchen table instructing her child how to, and the child sitting at the table writing,
Yeah.
the imagery that they put out there is school but at home.
Hmm.
Well, we didn't like school.
Hmm.
So why would we, first of all, so that tells us that sort of makes us go, ooh, I don't want to do that. But then the other thing is, why would you want to do that? Don't do that.
Hmm.
Do it differently. And you know the founding fathers were all homeschooled. Just saying.
Well, I want to thank you again so much for coming on. I admire you very much, and I know that our listeners learned a lot from you tonight. For one last piece of advice, let's say one of our listeners now is like, yes, I am interested in homeschooling. Should they just Google homeschool near me or homeschool co-ops? Where should they go?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, they should get my book. I wish I had it, but it's over there and I can't reach it. It's called They're Your Kids. You can go to samsorbo.com to find it. I also have a or a school year devotional for families, which I highly recommend. I've gotten such great reviews on that, and my book, They're Your Kids. The devotional is called Teach from Love, and start doing some research. Don't go out and buy a ton of curriculum because you just don't know yet if you're just embarking. But yes, I would search for homeschool co-ops in your area, homeschool groups. Search out people, because people, homeschoolers especially, they typically I think the typical homeschooler loves what they do and they love to share, and so they want people to join the ranks, because the more homeschoolers there are, the more powerful a lobby we become.
Hmm.
And that's important because we have to maintain our integrity. We have to maintain our independence. And the government is looking for ways to restrict us, ways to limit us, ways to control us, and we resent that. We don't want
Yeah.
that. So we're always looking to join to grow our ranks. The other thing I want to do is mention my book, Words for Warriors, which is out now, brand new. It did hit #1 on Amazon, which I'm
Nice.
very proud of.
Great.
It's getting great reviews, and it deals with the theft of our language, and the danger that lies therein. And so I encourage people, especially with that, because it will help you change a little bit just the way you think of some of the terms that we just use. We just bandy them about without actually really understanding how they've been sort of perverted and changed over time.
Hmm.
And it might help a little elasticity in your brain to wrap your head around what education might be instead of what we've been taught that it is, because we've been taught wrong. And that's really that's really sort of the big nut to crack in all of this. So for somebody who's new to homeschooling, start doing your research. I definitely would recommend you go to samsorbo.com and start watching some of my videos. Hopefully they will just set off little, in your brain
Yeah.
to help you to start thinking about things differently. You can reimagine the family dynamic, the relationship that you have with your children. um, you can do something beyond your wildest dreams. Honestly, you have such an opportunity with your children. And I'll just say this: I have friends who have homeschooled all four of their children. Her oldest one is in her 30s now, and dear friend of mine. And all of their kids live very close by. They live in a big city, but all their kids live very close by, come to visit every other day. My girlfriend now has four grandchildren and another one on the way, and the grandkids are over all the time. She doesn't have time for me because her family is so closely knit because she homeschooled, because she homeschooled.
Mhm.
And I will say this: she's not like the brightest crayon in the box. It's not that she didn't graduate college. It's not that she's got a PhD in education. She just poured into them, gave them a love of learning, and showed them how to go about it. And so if you feel inadequate because the school taught you you're inadequate, please don't saddle your child with that same burden of feeling inadequate. But show your child that despite your feeling inadequate, you are capable of learning anything that you set your mind to, and you can show them that.
Mm.
And then the last thing I'll say is the answers are all in the books. The answer's right there. The teaching is all in the books. The teaching's in the textbooks. But we don't know that because we went to school and the teacher taught us everything. But that's not how it really works. Everything's in the textbook. So you just read the textbook with your kid and figure it out with them. And that's showing them love.
Mm.
That's love to them. So have fun. We have our kids well, I had my kids for a reason,
Yeah, right.
so that they would take care of me in my retirement.
Well, you used the word empowering a few times throughout this episode, and I feel like that was a great way to end by empowering us as parents or future parents, that we can do much more than we realized. And you've helped open our eyes and kind of open the door to start our homeschool journey wherever we're at this point. So thank you so
Excellent.
much, Sam.
Thanks for having me.